The Terminal List. Chris Pratt stars in your dad's new favorite show. Whether you love or hate Chris Pratt, the career he's built for himself is certainly respectable. Initially breaking out as the lovable doofus Andy Dwyer in Parks and Recreation, Pratt soon was on his way to becoming of the one biggest movie stars in the business. He's Star-Lord in the MCU, is one of the main faces of the massively successful Jurassic World films, and has lent his vocal talents to critically acclaimed animated flicks like The Lego Movie and onward. Even in more straightforward action films like The Tomorrow War or The Magnificent Seven, Pratt has managed to bring in some of that goofy everyman presence that made him a star. That makes his involvement in the new Prime Video series The Terminal List a bit of a head-scratcher. It's not that The Terminal List is a bad show. It's insanely entertaining, with some expertly shot and well-choreographed action set pieces, and a serviceable, albeit cliché tale of revenge. In other words, it's one of those shows your dad will love watching alongside new episodes of Jack Ryan and Bosch. But its overt self-seriousness and commitment to grit can often get in the way of allowing Pratt to be himself on screen, or at least bring some of the charm that fans of his are familiar with. Based on the best-selling novel of the same name by former Navy SEAL Jack Carr, The Terminal List centers around James Reese Pratt, a Navy SEAL who returns home in a state of disarray after an operation gone terribly wrong leads to his entire platoon being ambushed. Upon his arrival back to the States, Reese begins to doubt his own memories and recollections of previous events and suspects that he may be one of those responsible for the attack on his platoon. When the blood and violence start to follow him back to the stateside, causing numerous personal tragedies and putting those he loves in danger, Reese takes matters into his own hands, embarking on a ruthlessly cruel path of revenge. The Terminal List without a doubt delivers when focusing on its action. It's a blend between Remake and Commando, with shades of the anti-establishment and anti-war themes of First Blood. One may be quick to dismiss Pratt's James Reese. He's not your typical action hero, and some of the lengths he undertakes in his revenge tour would likely even make John Wick blush. There's even a scene that feels straight out of Mortal Kombat, featuring Pratt's Reese ripping out the intestines of an adversary and hanging him. It's a pseudo-Punisher type tale, and at times it's hard to buy a typically likable presence like Pratt in this type of role. He has the physicality down, but there's a bit of a disconnect, especially since the show's writing often doesn't do the audience any favors in knowing whether to condone the actions of his character. While it's easy enough to buy into the misfortunes that plague its protagonist, the series never does enough to make James Reese feel human. The supporting cast around Pratt is impressive, despite some being ludicrously underutilized. Taylor Kitsch's performance as Reese's ally Ben Edwards is one of the biggest highlights of the series. Both Kitsch and Pratt are at their best in their scenes together, with authentic chemistry that makes the brotherly bond they have for one another palpable, and it's their interactions that give the show the majority of its emotional elements. After initially risking overexposure in the early 2010s, it's truly nice to see Kitsch getting these types of roles that genuinely bring out his charisma. Jai Courtney is another major standout as Stephen Horn, a shady businessman who becomes one of Reese's primary targets. Courtney seems to know the exact kind of project he's in, feeling much more like the villain out of a 90s action flick, but never feeling out of place, playing the kind of antagonist that you love to hate. Constance Wu is another winner amongst the ensemble as Katie Buranek, a journalist who becomes an unlikely ally to Reese. While an unlikely addition to the cast, Wu plays off both Pratt and Jean Triplehorn extremely well. Riley Keough, who has proven in the past to be extremely talented, isn't given much to do as Reese's wife to make an impression, despite being listed in the main cast. It's the generic nature of the writing and execution that is the biggest hurdle for the Terminal List, and in the end, it just barely squeaks by. The story itself is insanely predictable, and even casual viewers will likely see every twist and turn the series throws at them within the first 2 episodes. Shows like Remake succeeded in providing successful misdirects and revelations that had audiences at home jumping to the next episode. The Terminal List premieres July 1, exclusively on Prime Video. Night Shift cat and mouse invasion thriller maintains suspense through simplicity. Like its title, Night Shift operates on simplicity. A lone woman in a massive factory experiences the worst possible first day of work ever when a break-in occurs. That simplicity allows directors Greg Swinson and Ryan Thiessen to cut straight to the thrills, creating a sustained level of suspense and violence throughout. It makes for an effective and often breathless experience. Karen, Natalie Terrazino, starts her first shift as the night janitor of a sprawling factory with the quick tour of the place courtesy of an abrasive day janitor. That encounter is downright polite compared to a couple of menacing workers that make it clear they side with Danny. J.C. Oakley III, the husband Karen served with divorce papers. Then there are the frequent calls from home by her kid's apathetic babysitter. Finally left alone for the night, Karen settles into a peaceful routine. But an unexpected arrival kickstarts a brutal and prolonged fight for survival. Swinson and Thiessen, working off Swinson's script, make smart choices in introductions to maximize the invasion thrills for a prolonged second and third act. The opening credits play over establishing shots of the setting, giving an idea of just how large the space is before we even lay eyes on Karen. The gruff interactions between Karen and her tour guide relay every pertinent detail in an easily digestible and plausible format. Without spelling it out or getting too heavy-handed, though some dialogue gets clunky, a perfunctory first 15 minutes or so spells out precisely what Karen will be up against and why. Night Shift isn't interested in setting up any narrative surprises. Instead, the filmmakers channel their focus into an unrelenting cat-and-mouse chase between Karen and a handful of imposing masked invaders. They intend to trap her inside and kill her, but they'll have to catch her first. Swinson and Thiessen dedicate most of the runtime to creative and edge-of-your-seat sequences to propel and maintain the suspense. Terrazino struggles in the initial introductions, but quickly settles into her role once the action kicks into high gear. To avoid detection, Karen must hide, squeeze, climb, crawl, and dangle her way around the factory. Getting found leads to brutality, bloodletting, and extreme peril. Terrazino handles the physically demanding part well, but isn't as natural with dialogue. It's occasionally exacerbated by contrived scenarios or clumsy choices meant to progress the plot and stakes. Solid direction, excellent use of space, and brisk pacing that delivers on plenty of thrills make for a quick and entertaining invasion thriller. The audience may remain one giant step ahead of Karen regarding the killer's motivations, but it doesn't detract much from the overarching, pain-inflicting journey. Night Shift's strength is its simple execution and its tension-fueled cat-and-mouse chase in an isolated, single setting. Those looking for narrative twists or surprises might come away disappointed, but if you're in the mood for a lean, mean thriller unafraid to put its characters through some pain, Night Shift offers up a solid and nail-biting time. Idris Elba vs. Lion Beast rated R for violent content and bloody images. One of the summer's new horror movies is the survival film Beast from Universal Pictures, pitting Idris Elba up against a hungry lion and releasing into theaters on August 19, 2022. The good news on top of the movie's great premise: Beast has been rated R for violent content, bloody images in some language. Baltaser Cormaker, Everest, Adrift, directed Beast for Universal Pictures. Based on an idea by Jamie Primack Sullivan, Ryan Engel, Rampage, wrote the script. In Beast, a recently widowed man, Idris Elba, and his two teenage daughters travel to a game reserve in South Africa. However, their journey of healing soon turns into a fight for survival when a bloodthirsty lion starts to stalk them. Here's a longer plot synopsis for the film. Elba plays Dr. Nate Daniels, a recently widowed husband who returns to South Africa, where he first met his wife, on a long-planned trip with their daughters to a game reserve managed by Martin Battles, Charlotte Copley, an old family friend and wildlife biologist. But what begins as a journey of healing jolts into a fearsome fight for survival when a lion, a survivor of bloodthirsty poachers who now sees all humans as the enemy, begins stalking them. Iana Halley plays Daniel's 18-year-old daughter, Meredith, and Lisa Jeffries plays his 13-year-old, Nora. Idris Elba vs. Lion Beast, rated R for violent content and bloody images. One of this summer's new horror movies is the survival film Beast from Universal Pictures, pitting Idris Elba up against a hungry lion and releasing into theaters on August 19, 2022. The good news on top of the movie's great premise: Beast has been rated R for violent content, bloody images in some language. Baltasar Kormakur, Everest, Adrift, directed Beast for Universal Pictures. Based on an idea by Jamie Primack Sullivan, Ryan Engel, Rampage, wrote the script. In Beast, a recently widowed man, Idris Elba, and his two teenage daughters travel to a game reserve in South Africa. However, their journey of healing soon turns into a fight for survival when a bloodthirsty lion starts to stalk them. Here's a longer plot synopsis for the film. Elba plays Dr. Nate Daniels, a recently widowed husband who returns to South Africa, where he first met his wife, on a long-planned trip with their daughters to a game reserve managed by Martin Battles, Charlotte Copley, an old family friend and wildlife biologist. But what begins as a journey of healing jolts into a fearsome fight for survival when a lion, a survivor of bloodthirsty poachers who now sees all humans as the enemy, begins stalking them. Iana Halley plays Daniel's 18-year-old daughter, Meredith, and Lisa Jeffries plays his 13-year-old, Nora. Salem's Lot tie-in edition of Stephen King's novel gives us first tease of upcoming remake. With just about 2 months to go until the planned release, we've been getting lots of questions about the new adaptation of Stephen King's Salem's Lot, which Warner Bros. Is supposedly bringing to theaters on September 9, 2022. Is the film actually going to meet that date, despite the fact that the marketing campaign hasn't even started yet? Well, the upcoming release of a movie tie-in edition of Stephen King's classic novel seems to indicate that the movie is indeed on the way, the book hitting shelves on August 2, 2022. Soon to be a new major motion picture, this particular re-release of King's novel is labeled. Of note here, the cover for the movie tie-in edition features the first piece of teaser art for the brand new adaptation, looking like a teaser poster for director Gary Dauberman's movie. Take your first step inside the brand new Salem's Lot below. James Wan is producing Salem's Lot 2022 for Warner Bros. And New Line, with Gary Dauberman, It, The Nun, Annabelle Comes Home, writing the script and also directing. Haunted by an incident from his childhood, author Ben Mears returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration for his next book, only to discover the town is being preyed upon by a bloodthirsty vampire and his loyal servant. The cast includes Lewis Pullman, Maiten Ziley, Alfred Woodard, Bill Camp, John Benjamin Hickey, Nicholas Cravetti, Jordan Preston Carter, William Sadler, Spencer Treat Clark, Kate Woodward, Deborah Christopherson, and Pilu Wesbick. Fresh off Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper directed the very first adaptation of Salem's Lot back in 1979, and a new mini-series followed in its wake more recently, in 2004.